case there. Yeah, just because they did have some.
No, this is the Don Edwards duck hunting meeting. Yes. So, how long do you expect the meeting to last?
Hey Terry, it's Melissa. It would be great if, I mean, it's a good question. We don't have a lot of presentation, between 7:30 and 8. It'd be great if we would get done sooner, but it just really depends on how many questions we have. But regardless, if you do have to end sooner than is the meeting, we will be able to record this and you could refer back to it.
All right, great.
Yeah, and you can hang up anytime.
Yeah, this is the first time I've done a meeting like this, so I don't know what the protocol is or anything.
Yeah, sadly, we're doing way too many of them like this.
Yeah, I'm sure you were pretty busy with it. All right, I'll just kick back and hope for few interruptions here.
Hey, Virginia, nice to see you on the call.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. So we'll give folks a couple more minutes. Okay, what do you guys, what do y'all think? Should we just get started? Looks like we've got about 32 people, which is great.
Yeah.
So what would be great is if everybody could just make sure they're on mute, unless you're ready to ask a question or something like that. We're just going to start off putting everybody on mute. But yeah, so welcome everyone. It's nice to see some of you. What I'd like to do is just welcome everybody to the meeting for the 2021 waterfowl season for Don Edwards San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And there might also be a few folks on who just want to talk about waterfowl hunting in general. So as you know, I posted this on our Facebook page too. So glad to see we've got quite a few folks on. Yeah, as a general rule, so we're going to try to stick to ending between 7 and 7:30, but it just really depends on how many questions we get. If everybody, so I'm not super familiar with Zoom. We use something different for our job, but if everybody could, if you're interested, open up the chat box, and that is on the bottom menu. And that way, if folks want to type any kind of message or ask any kind of questions, then you can do that and I'll see that as well. And as Matt mentioned, we are recording this meeting. And so if there's anybody who has to drop off early or just can't attend, you can contact me and I can give you that link to the recording. So did I miss anything, Matt, before we get started?
No, I think that was it. And I think we'll use the chat box to keep everyone from asking a question at once. Just type in the chat, hey, I have a question. And that way we can make sure everybody who has a question will call on you and everyone has a chance to ask.
Yeah, and thank you. I wanted to elaborate a little more on that. I'm going to go over some waterfowl hunting information that's going to be more general and specific to Don Edwards. And then at the end, Matt is going to go over, sorry, I'm in my living room, by the way, so there's lots of distractions going on. So, but Matt is going to go over some specific pond conditions that includes like levees and water levels. And I know lots of people ask about water levels. So what it would be great is if during the presentation you have a burning question, put it in the chat box and we can unmute you and we can talk. But if you can, maybe wait until the end and we'll have a more robust kind of Q&A. And so I think that might be the key to helping us move along. And anyway, that's that. Let me get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Matt, I need you to enable me to share my screen. There we go. And just take just a second. Aha. Can everybody see those cans in the background? So if anybody who can't, well, actually I don't have any answers for you. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So let's go ahead and get started. So just really quickly how our meeting's gonna go tonight. I'm gonna really briefly go over Refuge overview. This is gonna be very familiar to you seasoned Don Edwards hunters. And I'm gonna spend the bulk of what I'm talking about on item 2, waterfowl hunting information. And then I am gonna touch briefly on how COVID-19 is gonna affect our hunt program. And then I will turn it over to Virginia from Santa Clara University, and she'll talk about a study that she's working on. And then Matt will go ahead and talk about the proposed changes to the hunt program. And I apologize, I didn't do this initially, but I'll have Matt go ahead and introduce himself once we get to that portion. Actually, you know what? Matt, go ahead and introduce yourself now. So I didn't mean to forget that, but please do.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Melissa. And I've met a few of you, but I haven't met most of you yet. So I am Matt Brown, so I'm the refuge manager for Don Edwards San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Many of you worked with Jared Underwood, who was my predecessor. Jared has moved on to a position out in Hawaii, and I've been fortunate enough to take his place. I've been here going on 2 years now, so shame on me if I haven't met you. But I appreciate the opportunity to at least meet you in this format and, begin a dialogue with all of you. So thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that completely. And also, by the way, I've talked to so many of you for so many years, but for those of you who don't know, my name is Melissa Amato, and I'm a wildlife refuge specialist, which basically kind of means assistant manager for the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. But I have been managing the waterfowl hunting program for Don Edwards and now for San Pablo for the last 12 years. And then is there anybody else from Don Edwards or Fish and Wildlife that wants to introduce themselves before we get started?
Hey, Melissa. This is Officer Fan with Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm a federal wildlife officer with the entire San Francisco Bay Refuge complex. So I bounce around all over, but typically I will be the game warden out there patrolling and checking you guys when you guys are out there, especially with our permitted hunts that Melissa provides for the public. And I'll provide my contact information in the chat box.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm just going to hop right back over into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen again here. All righty. And so, yeah, like I said, at the very end, Matt is going to go over the changes to the ponds and the conditions. So maybe a lot of your questions will be answered by what Matt talks about. And then at the end, we'll do Q&A for as long as people want to stick around. Let's see here. Great. So really quickly, for those of you who are not familiar with the refuge, it was established to conserve endangered species and to provide habitat for migratory birds and wildlife, to restore habitat and to provide wildlife-oriented recreation. And hunting is one of our top 6 priorities for that type of recreation. So the 2 main types of habitats that we have on the refuge is, one is tidal marsh habitat that you can kind of see in the background. This habitat provides habitat for our endangered species. The 2 main endangered species we have are Ridgway's rail, which is the bird that you see, and salt marsh harvest mouse, which is the little guy you see on the right-hand side. These 2 species do not exist anywhere else on the planet except for San Francisco Bay tidal marshes. So you can probably see why they're endangered and they're a priority for us. And then of course our managed ponds that provides the great habitat for mig birds. So this is one of our maps on the waterfowl hunting website. This is just kind of an overview. We've got over 10,000 acres that are open to waterfowl hunting. Basically, this map just identifies the gray ponds that are open for hunting 7 days a week. And then we have the yellow ponds in the South Bay that are open 3 days a week. And I'll go through each of these units in more detail in the next minute or 2. So California Department of Fish and Wildlife finally posted their waterfowl hunting regs for this season. And I won't read through all of these, but if you want to refer back to these dates, that website on the bottom of the slide is where you're going to want to visit. And just keep in mind that San Francisco Bay is in the balance of state zone. And basically our regular duck season starts October 24th this year, and I'll go through January 31st. And then I'll let you all just check out those other dates for those other seasons. And the Don Edwards website. So we have a waterfowl hunting information page. This is where you're going to want to go to get your refuge permits, your maps, your directions, the waterfowl hunting regulations. The easiest way to find this website is just to Google search Don Edwards Hunting, and the very first search result is going to get you right to our website. And this is what that website's going to look like. And I updated this website yesterday, so you should be able to go on and get your permits right after this meeting or right now, whichever. But it should be updated and ready to go. And my contact information is on this webpage, and you can contact me anytime. So as I mentioned, we've got several units open to waterfowl hunting, and our West Bay units are Bear Island and Greco Island. So just to orient you, Redwood City is right here, and Redwood City Marina is right here. Hopefully everybody can see my mouse. So Bear and Greco are open 7 days a week, and they're accessible by boat only. So essentially you can hunt anywhere that you can navigate with your boat. You can definitely pull your boat up, but we do want you to shoot from your boat. Now, of course, if you have to get out and retrieve a bird, you can absolutely get out, walk to retrieve a bird. That's no problem. You're also welcome to hunt from your boat in the sloughs in Redwood Creek and in Steinberger Slough. Just keep in mind, you need to have a 150-yard buffer from these residential areas. A lot of times when I get calls throughout the year about why am I hearing shooting, it's people who are living in these Redwood Shores neighborhoods and things like that. So a lot of people tell me they just kind of steer clear of these sloughs and Redwood Creek, but they're huntable. And Ravenswood Ponds. So again, these are just west of Dumbarton Bridge. You can access these ponds from a frontage road that runs parallel to Bayfront Expressway. And there are two trailheads, and you basically just park on the shoulder, and you can walk or bicycle out on either of these trailheads. I think if I hadn't mentioned, these are open 7 days a week to hunting. All we ask is that you stay 300 feet from, this is a PG&E substation. And we'd also like you to be at least 300 feet away from the freeway as well. You can either shoot from the levee in these ponds, or you can throw your boat into the pond and shoot from your boat.
And Melissa, can I say something?
Yes, please.
This one, just FYI for everyone's information, in the last several months or so, PG&E has installed a gate right in front of their substation. So unfortunately, you can't get between the two access points by vehicle without going out onto the highway. So they have blocked off. You can get to both access points still, but to move from one to the other, you do have to go out onto the highway because there's a new PG&E gate there. So.
Ah, interesting. Okay, okay. Great. And also, so Matt, while I'm sharing my screen, I can't seem to see the chat box. So if you see anybody who has comments or needs to ask about a slide I'm on, Matt, just go ahead and let me know.
So 2 questions have popped up, Melissa.
Yeah.
And the one about Ravenswood, and I'll get to the other one later. Where can you dump your boat in at R2, R1 area at Ravenswood?
I mean, anytime, once you get, so we have gates at those I guess call them trailheads, but anyway, anywhere past the gate, you can walk your boat out onto the levee as far as you want, at least 300 feet, right? But you can go as far as you want. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's great. And Chris, we see your question. We'll answer at the end.
Yeah, and if Matt, you're seeing questions that you're going to cover, then we can keep going. So.
Yeah, correct. No driving on the levee.
Okay. Right. Only foot and bicycle access on those levees. So. The Maori ponds in Pond A19. So the Maori ponds are unique. They are owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They are part of the Refuge, but they are managed for salt making by Cargill. And so they have given us guidance about hunting guidelines for these areas, for the imponds. So the imponds and 819 are only accessible by boat. You would probably want to launch at Alviso Marina, and it could be a 30-45 minute boat ride depending on your boat. So these aren't the most easily accessible ponds. Once you get to these ponds, what they want you to do is pull your boat up over the levee into the pond and hunt within the pond itself. You can do that 7 days a week here. We have not heard that Cargill is going to be doing any maintenance in these ponds this year, so we don't anticipate that there are any days where you would not be able to hunt. And I'll just go ahead and say the most frequent question I get about Maori ponds is, can they be accessed by land? And the answer is they're surrounded by private property. And so the refuge does not have the authorization to give you permission to access these by land. And so we tell you that they're accessible by boat. And that's the same goes for pond A19. So. And then we have the Alviso ponds, and I'll talk in more detail about these after this slide as well. These are open 3 days a week, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday. The ponds you see in the white font are part of the Don Edwards Refuge, and they are open to waterfowl hunting. The Sunnyvale Water Treatment Plant and Pond A4 are not part of the refuge, and those are not open to waterfowl hunting. All I'll say here is the AB1 through A3W ponds are the ponds that have hunt blinds. And then I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. And ponds A5, 7, and 8 do not have blinds. So I'll go on to. So this is just an example of one of the maps we have on the Don Edwards website, showing you what parts of levees are drivable. It shows you that there's a bay trail located along the southern edge of these ponds. We have 2 check stations in this pond system, depending on which blinds you want to shoot. And I will say here that if you're not familiar with these check stations and how to get there now already, you really want to go to our website and pull up written directions to hunt areas. Because if you just simply take this map and it's an early dark morning, you're probably not going to find these check stations very easily. Could get really frustrated. So pull up those written directions for finding those check stations. And let's see, I think one thing that I did mention, these are the blinds. By the way, our blinds are first come, first serve. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but they're not reservable. And the other thing I want to mention is we do have one ADA blind located between pond AB1 and A2E. And there's more information about that blind in our hunting regulations. And then ponds A5, 7, and 8. These are also open 3 days a week. You can either hunt from the levee, and if you are hunting from the levee, we ask that you're shooting into the ponds themselves, as opposed to not shooting Guadalupe Slough or Alviso Slough. We want to avoid hunters shooting towards other hunters in Guadalupe Slough. So yeah, you can hunt from the levees in this pond system, or you can bring a boat, and there's a kind of a rudimentary boat ramp where you can pull your boat into the ponds, and you can also shoot from your boat. It identifies where our check station is, and the written directions will get you to that check station as well. I will point out the black and white checkered lines, which indicate that you can't hunt from that specific location. Near the check station, it's because of safety. And along the eastern side of A8, it's owned by Santa Clara Valley Water District. And so that section of levee is not open for hunting. Once you get to the check stations, this is basically what you're gonna see. Thanks to Juan for building these. These are great. We used to have check stations that weren't covered, excuse me. And this just happens to be a check station that also shows you where our blinds are located. You're gonna have two boxes. There's gonna be a box for hunter check-in sheets and a box for red cards. And when you get to the check station, we ask that you sign in, especially in the locations where you have blinds. As I said, those blinds are on a first come, first served basis. So we need to have you write down the pond that you're going to be hunting and the blind that you're going to be hunting. And please do, when you leave, please remember to sign out of the blind as well. And that lets the next person know that that blind is available. And the other thing we ask is don't sign in the morning and then go to lunch and then come back thinking that the blind is still yours. We really do want people to sign out when they leave for any amount of time. And these are harvest cards or red cards. You can grab one of these in the check station, take it to your hunt area. We'd love to have you fill this out and then drop it in that box. And this really helps us keep track of who's shooting what, where. And this is really just a data collection for us. So yeah, let me wrap this up really quick for how you can help us. So this is gonna be the biggest thing that I harp on because we get more complaints from the public about hunting because of shells and garbage. So please, please pick up your empty shot shells and take your garbage out and home with you. And maybe that means bringing a small trash bag with you. We're not gonna have trash cans located at the check stations this year. And it's because of COVID safety issues. So yeah, please just do your best to reasonably and safely pick up your shot shells and garbage. So as you probably predicted, we're not going to have any organized large work parties this year to repair or rebuild blinds. We're still going to allow individuals and small groups to go out if you can do so safely. But just please let me know when you want to go out, and I can let Matt and Glendale know that there will be hunters out there working on blinds. And you don't have to do that on a hunt day. You can do it any day of the week that you want to go out and work on a blind. Although I probably wouldn't do it on a hunt day. Please drive slow on our levees. They're fragile. And be extremely cautious. If those levees are wet, many of you already know, they're very, very slippery. And then lastly, we're gonna have folks mooring boats out on our levees. And so please don't move them unless a boat is just physically in your way of getting into the water. Just go ahead and leave it be. And so this is, what are we doing about COVID-19 and waterfowl hunting? And the answer is we're absolutely gonna have a waterfowl hunting season. I'm basically just putting up a notice that you're gonna see on our website, and it's gonna be on every Refuge website in the nation. This is stuff that folks have probably seen again and again. I'm not gonna read through this, but the only thing that I will emphasize is if you, here we go, the last bullet. If you feel sick, please stay home. Even if you think it's a cold, please stay home, because we really want to have hunters feel safe and be healthy when they're out this season. So, and as far as recommendations from us specifically for hunting Don Edwards, again, these are going to be super familiar. We would love to ask and encourage you to wear face masks when you're going to and from your check stations and to and from your hunt areas. Once you get to your hunt area, it's up to you if you want to wear one or not. Stay 6 feet apart from other hunting groups. And the two we that are kind of new this year, or also new this year, encourage you to bring your own hand sanitizer and consider bringing your own toilet paper. And the reason is because we're going to have these things stocked in our porta potties this year, but there's no guarantee that people aren't going to take them. And so just to be on the safe side, you might want to have those two things on hand. Yeah, that's all I have. Unless anybody has a burning question right now, I can go ahead and we can turn it over to Virginia, who's going to talk to you guys for
Melissa, there are about 4 or 5 like specific questions that maybe if you stopped sharing and popped up the Zoom, you could probably read through those questions really quickly and answer. It looks like we could pound those out.
Okay, so Dennis.
First one is from,
yeah, so I'm looking at, so Dennis, there should still be a boat ramp at pond A8 that I think that's not going to change. It's going to be the same muddy boat ramp that you can pull your boat in. So, and
can you talk about the to the west of Smith Slough and Inner Bear Island? So you guys just call Bear Island in Redwood City as being open to hunting, but you don't differentiate between and actually it's the north side of Smith and the south side of Smith. So the south side of Smith would be between Smith Slough and Highway 101. Okay, so that complex, are those ponds in there that have been breached in the last several years are open, and they are posted, but they're not shown on the DFW site, on the Don Edwards site, as being closed. They just talk about Bear Island being open for hunting. So that's while it would be a wonderful place to be able to hunt, it's a high visibility spot, and it's not a spot we want people going into there thinking that they can shoot.
Yeah. So Bear Island, and I think this is what you're talking about. Bear Island there's an inner, middle, and Bear. And inner is the closest piece to Highway 101, and it is surrounded by, it's the closest to all that development. And that is, in fact, not open to waterfowl hunting. And I'm looking at our map right now. So our map 1 shows that it's not open. But if there's any other websites that show it is, it's incorrect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Let me go back to Zoom. How early can you start working on blinds? So I didn't ask you about this, Matt, but I believe that bird nesting is wrapped up out in the ponds, and people can get out there ASAP, right?
As long as they check in with you and we know that they're going out there, we could start anytime then.
Right. And as far as publishing red card data, man, I used to have so much more time than I do now. And I would enter all of that harvest information into spreadsheets, and I could send it out almost on a weekly basis. It was great. I can't do that this year. And that'll be something I can talk with Matt about to see if there's any intern or any person who wants to collect that data and compile it. So you would essentially get weekly updates of what species are being shot in what numbers in what ponds. So that's something we can talk about, Matt and I can talk about after this meeting. So we don't allow people to go out into closed areas to scout out hunt locations. But many of those areas are adjacent to public trails that are open every single day. So if you wanted to check out the AB1, A3W ponds, you can go out to the Bay Trail, anytime. but we wouldn't be able to allow folks to go out to pond A5, 7, and 8, for example, because it's just a closed area. So we can't do that. And then somebody asked about, can I hunt out of but next to my boat? Which location? Let's see. Probably, the answer is probably yes, but it depends on the location. A5 is accessible by walking or biking, correct? There are no blinds, which is correct. And we will talk about another ADA blind. Okay, I think I've covered those questions. You know, anyway, if I have missed something, you all know how to get a hold of me. My primary phone number is my cell phone number now, so I'm really easy to get a hold of. So, okay, want to turn it over to Virginia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So my name is Virginia Matzik, and I'm a restoration ecologist at Santa Clara University, very close to the Don Edwards Refuge. And I'm the principal investigator on a study of the economics of recreational hunting in Northern California. And in particular, my interest, because I'm a restoration person, is that there's all these sites that, like Melissa was talking about, where, you know, they've been restored back to good habitat from having been salt ponds before. And we're interested in, you know, the premise of our study is basically that the state made a big investment in buying the land and doing the restoration. And then that's a benefit that comes to hunters, but hunters also have economic impact. So when you travel to the site, you drive your car, you buy gas, you get lunch, you buy shells, you buy, you know, all these things. So what we're trying to do is kind of look at the economic payback by hunters to by hunting these sites and by having the sites open, so that we can look at, you know, policy that would, you know, in the future potentially argue for more hunting sites to be open, or that would, you know, show that there is a recreational benefit when we do, you know, restoration of habitat as well. So that's kind of the idea behind our study. And we did it, started it last year. And I'm actually going to share my screen here for a minute if I can, Matt.
Be able to.
Is that working?
Yep.
Okay. So first I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who was intercepted last season and talked to me or to my research assistants. I didn't know much about hunting, and most of the research assistants were students who knew nothing about hunting. And we so appreciate your patience and your kindness in talking to us. Some of you, if you hunted regularly, saw us out there every weekend, and I just can't say enough times how appreciative I am of the helpfulness and generosity of the hunting community at Don Edwards for helping us out with this last year. In terms of what we did, and this is sort of not just Don Edwards specific, but survey-wide, we intercepted 542 hunters in the North and South Bay area. So that includes the San Pablo Bay Federal Refuge and also the state area at Eden Landing, as well as Don Edwards. We also, if you hunted Grizzly Island or Gray Lodge, you might have run into us. We had some other waterfowl hunter intercepts. We also were looking at restoration of the Sacramento River, and so we intercepted deer hunters, and we were trying to get pheasant and turkey and other upland game bird hunters at that same, in those same sites. Unfortunately, we missed out a lot because the spring turkey season, although people still hunted, we were not allowed to go out and make, you know, contacts with people during shelter in place. So we did miss that, but we interviewed more than 1,100 hunters. And just to give you kind of an update on what we're doing next, the economic modeling has two phases. So the first phase we've done, that was last season. That involved all these in-person intercepts, and the kinds of questions that we asked people were about essentially how far they traveled to the site and how often they came. That's how we kind of look at economic impact, is by the time that you spend and the amount, distance that you travel in order to visit a particular site. But our second phase is looking at hunting preferences and opinions about management kind of more generally. And again, it's economic in the sense of trade-offs. Like I know Melissa's going to talk about water levels, and you're going to talk about the kinds of things that you want. And of course, the folks here at the Refuge are managing for lots of different needs and uses, right? Not just for hunters, but also for endangered species and so on. So we are taking an economic trade-off approach to that in our research. And so there's going to be an email follow-up to people who were kind enough to give us their email address when we intercepted them last season. But really this part of the survey does not depend on having been intercepted earlier. So what I'd like to do is just say that if you are interested in having your opinions recorded about management and about hunting generally in Northern California for waterfowl, or if you also hunt deer, upland game bird, we'd love to hear from you on your opinions there as well. So even if you were not part of our survey last season and you didn't give us your email then, I would love to have you participate in the next phase. And so one way that you could do that would be to either drop your email address in the chat. And if you go to the chat box, you'll see that there's a way to contact, to send a chat message that's viewable by everyone, but you could also click on the everyone and it will give you a drop down that shows my name. And so you can just send me a private chat with your email address if you like, or you can just email me at the address that you see here on the screen. And I will also put that in the chat so that you can find it. And you could also, let your other hunting friends know. And I'm also would love to know about listservs that you belong to, or any other like hunter Facebook groups, or anything that any other ways that you talk to other people who are hunting Northern California wildlife refuges for waterfowl, because it'd be great to have those opinions represented as well. So again, my main reason for coming on was to say thank you to the people that we intercepted last year. And for anyone who would like to be part of this going forward, we'd love to have your participation. And so just drop me your email in the chat or send me an email. And thanks very much, Melissa, for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and anybody can email me as well. And one thing I can check on Virginia is I am an administrator for our Facebook waterfowl group. I can check to see if it's okay that I put that information in a Facebook post too. Just
fantastic. It would just be a link that I could send you, and people can click on it and do the survey.
Okay, yeah, I'll touch base with you after this, and I'll check to see if that's something I can do. Well, thank you, Virginia. Matt, we'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So again, thank you everybody, and thanks for the questions coming in. And at the end of this, we'll have an opportunity for a more robust discussion about anything in this presentation and anything that Melissa or Virginia talked about as well. So what I'm going to talk about is some of the long-term planning that the Refuge is doing and some of the actions we're taking in regards to the levee system that protects the ponds throughout the Refuge. There's over 70 miles of levees on the Refuge, and in the last couple of years, we've embarked on a master plan to try and understand, one, what is happening to our levees, and then two, make good decisions about where we should put our limited resources in terms of levee maintenance. One of the reasons we've been prompted to do this, and many of you have seen this, this is a shot out from R1, one of the levees that you can go out to hunt in R1. We are seeing substantial erosion and impacts to our levee system. You can see here the image on the left, where the riprap is, that's facing the bay. And, we've had increase, the water levels in the South Bay are increasing. The sort of significance of these big wind events, when PG&E is shutting off power, those seem to be increasing. And so when you get high tide events and you get strong winds, we are seeing substantial levee erosion, not just on the front side that faces the bay, but the picture on the right, it shows on the back side that when you have significant overtopping events, it starts eating away at the back side of the levees as well. And you can only have a few storm cycles of that, and you're going to lose the levee and ultimately we'll lose our ability to manage these ponds and protect the infrastructure that's behind these levees. So we started with a study of looking at if a small level of sea level rise that's occurred already is causing this impact on our levees, what's it going to look like into the future? And we were really just looking at the next 20 years. Beyond that, 20 years out, it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but certainly beyond 20 years, the variance in what the sea level rise is going to be like is pretty dramatic. So we're looking at a 20-year rise. And if our the levees that are out there are only 10 feet high, over the next 20 years, there's a 90% chance that during high tide events, those are going to start overtopping and eroding. If there's an 11-foot levee, there's a 30% chance it's going to overtop during a high tide event. And you can see the chart there. And again, one overtopping event doesn't mean that you've lost the levee, but you get a couple of those and you really start to increase the chances that we're going to lose the levee system. So what we did with our analysis is we went out and we surveyed all of our levees. And here you can see this is places where any place that's red is a place that was below 12 feet. So this particular complex, which is very important for hunting, it was endangered. For one, the areas that are high are unfortunately the areas that are there along the bay. So they're taking the brunt of those northern winds. And then the areas that are lower are a little more protected by marsh, but they're more susceptible to those king tide events that are going to result in the overtopping. So we looked at the levee system, and we were fortunate that we received almost $10 million this year to address our failing levees. That's due in large part to advocacy from the folks who are on this call, different folks in the conservation community around the bay. We've gotten this $10 million pot of money to repair our levees, which in context of things, there are 543 refuges around the country. Don Edwards, San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge, got 90% of the construction money this year. So we are assuming that this is a very rare event that we will get this level of money. So we are taking a 20-year horizon in where should we invest this money to get the most bang for the buck. So I want to talk about the Moffett complex here and specifically what our plan is. I know there's a lot of numbers on the screen, but it's basically, there's two big pieces of the work that's going to be taking place here at Moffett in this pond complex over the next 2 years. One, if you remember the slide that showed the height of the levee, there are a lot of low sections. So we are going to significantly raise the entire outer levee all the way around A3W. We're going to raise that entire system up to 13 feet. So that entire levee system is going to get raised up. We're also going to armor and strengthen that so that in the event it does overtop, because even if you raise it to 13 feet, there's still going to be events that it overtops. We're going to armor both the front and the back of that levee in order so that we can maintain these as managed ponds for at least the next 20 years. So that's sort of step one of this investment is that we were going to armor and raise the entire thing. We're using some new technologies instead of the traditional riprap, which was made up of all sorts of, wherever, both Cargill and the Refuge could find quality material. Now we're using a more engineered material. We started using this last year. Some of you might have seen it out in various parts in the levee, but sort of taking levees, rebuilding them, and then armoring them with this, more engineered material that's designed to have a much longer lifestyle and is designed to absorb that wave energy and overtopping energy. So these are just some pictures that are going up. So it's going to be this type of work over the next 2 years that will be taking place on that levee to raise it up. In the second phase, so phase one is rebuilding this entire outer levee, raising that up. As part of that, this interior levee between AB2 and A3W will also be raised up so that we can maintain different water levels between those two pond systems. A3W is lower than AB2, and by building up that interior levee, we'll be able to do that as well. Then the next phase is changes to the AB1, A2E, and AB2 complex here. This internal levee, which many of you have been out on, is not well. It is very weak in spots, particularly here in the sort of southeast corner of it where it gets the wind fetch blasting into it. So it's likely we're going to lose this levee in the next year or two. So instead of letting it breach uncontrollably, which could lead to stagnant areas of the pond, etc., we are going to take down this interior levee between AB1 and A2E, breach fairly close to where the water control structure is. Those of you who've been out there, you know where the water moves between those two. And we are going to connect these three ponds. Basically, they will become one big pond as part of this effort. And that's probably the piece that we recognize has the potential for the greatest impact to waterfowl hunting and recreation there in those ponds. This is the map. Melissa was showing it earlier, showing where the hunt blinds are scattered throughout the ponds. We are most concerned with once we unify these ponds into one system, because the water control structure that brings water into this pond system is up here. This is also where we've had the greatest silting. You all know how shallow it is up there. And there is a chance that once we, breach these ponds and they equalize, that some of these blinds may not be as optimal for hunting as they were. We recognize that. What we're proposing to do as part of this big work is, first off, we are going to go through over the next 2 years, and we are going to redo all of the blinds. So we will, all the blinds, we know they're not in great condition. We know the ones that are in good condition, it's because this community has worked so hard to get them in good community. But part of our contract to do all of this work includes redoing all of the blinds. We also have a fairly substantial piece of money set aside to help us deal with sort of the unintended consequences of our work. So we're going to be monitoring this over the next 2 years. We're going to rely on hearing back from this community as to what impacts you're seeing of this change in water level management. Our goal is to in no way decrease hunting opportunities. We want to optimize the hunting opportunities across the refuge and in these ponds. So if there are steps that we can take, we may end up removing some of the sediment from the bottom of AB1 in order to recreate channels and wetlands in that area. We're open to, if some of the blinds just become completely unreachable by boat, or they're just not feasible for hunting anymore, then we're open to relocating those blinds. And we can either relocate them to other places within this complex, A3W or A2E, We're also open to the possibility of relocating them over to the A5, A7, A8 complex. I also want to point out that we're going to have to relocate the ADA blind. We have not decided exactly where it would go, and we would be open to hearing comments about the best place to relocate the ADA blind. But we will say that, you know, part of the work that's going to take place is lowering that levee, which means we will get rid of the ADA blind. We will have the new one in place before we get rid of the old one. We're not going to go a season where we don't have an ADA blind that's in place.
Hey, Matt, just really quickly, there's a question from Mike about, can you tell us more about dredging options?
So we're at kind of a weird spot. So we put this project out to bid, and a variety of companies came and did site visits. You know, we sort of said, here's what we want done to the levees. And one of the options that we, you know, that requires a substantial amount of material, right, to come to build up these levees. So one of the options we gave them was go into AB1. You can dredge out as much material off the bottom there. You're gonna have to dry it. It's not easy material to work with, but it may be a lot more affordable than bringing it in, you know, from someplace way south or someplace in the North Bay. So, and we have not selected the final contractor. It's a big contract, so it has to get reviewed by headquarters, but sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'll select that contractor, and then we'll sit down with them and they'll start to tell us exactly how they want to accomplish what we're asking of them. And so that's why we wanted to have this conversation now before we sort of share this information with you, give you guys some time to think about what's being proposed. And then we can have that discussion with the contractors about how their work can be done in a way that minimizes the impact to the hunt program. They already in the requirements of the contract, they cannot work on Wednesdays or weekends. So none of the work that takes place out there will have a direct impact on the days that there's hunting. There may be some impact onto, you know, if they're going to work in a particular area, that may not be a place where you can keep your boat. But certainly any of that work before it begins, we would communicate to Melissa, communicate to this group, let everybody know before that type of impact would occur. And then, so there's a potential that it be dredged as part of the contractor doing the work. We also have enough resources, you know, we're holding back some of that money so that if this contractor gets to the end of the project and we decide that, boy, we really need to take another 6 inches to a foot off the bottom of AB1, we would hire a contractor to come in and do that. So it may happen as part of the initial construction. It may not be needed in a wide area, or it may be needed. You know, a lot of this we're going to discover as we go, because there hasn't been substantial maintenance on a lot of these internal levees and in these ponds for, well, as you all know, for a very long time. So then if we have to do the work, we'll have the resources to do it. Okay. Hope that answered that question. If anyone has driven over the Dumbarton, lately you've seen there are construction crews out there now working on the Dumbarton. This is another area, that picture I showed, substantial erosion taking place. The picture, yeah, up here, this is out there on that outer levee of R1. You know, I think it's telling, if you look at this map, if you look at the inset, in addition to the levees being impacted, you can see here, I'm pointing at the screen with my finger. That's helpful for all. You can see here how the marsh has been retreating. You know, so it's not just man-made structures that are being impacted by these rising sea levels and increased wind events. It's also that we've lost the marsh that protects these levees. So we have already started work out there now to shore up this entire levee system, keep it safe for people to walk on, and maintain our ability to bring water into and manage this pond. We are anticipating that work will be completely done here by the end of September. So this should not have an impact on the hunt season. In fact, the levee should be fully shored up and more robust and give us, you know, another year's worth of protection and waterfowl hunting there. But wanted to address that work is already taking place, because you can see it pretty clearly from the highway. So that work is
Hey
ongoing.
Matt, I have a,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? So Ravenswood ponds are generally really shallow, right?
Yes.
Because we have to completely dry them out for nesting endangered birds. And then right after they're done nesting, we do our best to start raising water levels, but they still end up being very shallow. Will the levee improvements change the water levels in these ponds, or will they just maintain shallow levels?
They will maintain shallow levels. This work will not impact the water control structure where we bring in water. You know, we bring in water way down here off Ravenswood Slough, and really only one of these water control structures is functioning. So we will continue to just use that one water control structure to bring it in. Not only are we limited, as you mentioned, well, we're limited by, one, the capacity of that water control structure and how much water we can bring in each tide cycle. We're also limited in that after hunt season, we have to dry these ponds to get, so if we filled them too high, we wouldn't be able to dry them out in the time of clover season. So it's unlikely that the water management regime is going to change. It certainly will not change because of this work that's being done in response to sea level rise. But so that will not impact water management within the Ravenswood ponds.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. I get a question from folks a lot, like, would you hunt the levees or would you bring a boat? And my answer is always, I would just hunt the levees because they're so shallow. And so yeah, status quo. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so that's, you know, that's a big overview of that work that's taking place. We recognize that over the next couple of years, you know, there's going to be a lot of construction out there. This is a huge investment for the Fish and Wildlife Service. We are doing this because we want to maintain these ponds as managed ponds for waterfowl hunting as long as we can. So this work now should buy us 20 plus years of being able, we're going to replace the water control structures as part of this work. We'll be able to move the water faster and easier with greater accuracy. There's going to be some short-term impacts, but ultimately it will be a long-term benefit that this, one of the most productive managed ponds that we have for waterfowl hunting, we are going to protect, and we're going to continue to manage it for waterfowl hunting into the future. So that is, I put it in the chat, I'll put it up here. For a minute, folks want to write it down. That's my cell phone number because I'm in my basement. So clearly, we're not at the office all that much, but that's my email address. You can reach out to me directly. You know, if you have specific hunt questions, Melissa's, you know, the hunt coordinator for the entire complex for San Pablo, for Don Edwards. She has the best information on that, but particularly any questions about the long-term management of the levees, what our plans are moving forward. I am happy to answer any questions, and really am asking this community that as you're out there, both of you have ideas or thoughts about what you've seen today. If you'd like to see these presentations again, I would be happy to share these with you individually or with a different group that you might have. And then, you know, our goal is to minimize the impacts to the greatest extent possible. So if you see something that's occurring, you know, hey, this is now happening because of the work you did, we want to know that so that we can work on a fix for it. So that is how you can get a hold of me.
Great. So Matt, there's a question from Mike. Will the breaching of the levee between 81 A2E impact the ability to store boats on that levee? And yes.
It likely will. Now, we don't know the construction schedule. So I talked about the levees that will impact the hunting community. We're also doing work over in the Alviso ponds that are not hunting. So like the A9 through A14, 15 complex. This is a 2-year contract, so it's a 2-year window of work. So if the contractor wants to do it all in the first year, they could start working at both, but the Alviso work has to be done this year. So they have to complete that project this year. So there is a chance they may not touch the Moffett complex until next year. They may mobilize their crew to Alviso for this construction season, come back to Moffett. But if it's a large company, and maybe a bunch of their other projects are on hold, which is happening to some construction projects around the Bay, they may mobilize to both at once. And we hope to have that conversation with whoever the contractor who's chosen to do the work is. We hope to have that conversation with them in the next couple of weeks. So. And I see a question, is there possible restoring marsh vegetation in barren ponds? So, really good question. So there's a big restoration effort, largest wetland restoration effort on the West Coast is taking place in the South Bay. You've seen A6 in different ponds. You've all observed some of these ponds being breached. The whole Alviso, A9 through 15 is ultimately going to be breached and restored to tidal marsh. So, we look across the landscape. I think, someone mentioned, managing for all sorts of recreation, all sorts of different species. R1, we try and do plovers and hunting. But we're committing that these ponds, particularly the Moffett ponds, AB1, A2W, those are going to we want to maintain those as managed ponds, not restore them to tidal wetland, keep them as managed ponds for diving ducks, dabbling ducks, etc. So there's going to be lots of tidal marsh restoration taking place, just not in those particular ponds. All right. I know it's a lot, and we've recorded this. I'm also, if someone reaches out to Melissa or me, those slides that you saw, I'm happy to share those with you so you can take more time to look at them. And if you have questions or thoughts, please reach out, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I think at this point, if there's any questions about anything, that's sort of the end of our formal presentations tonight.
Yeah. So if folks, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to just ask any questions right now. We can answer. Otherwise, you can call me later. Hey, Roy. You're on mute, Roy.
I came in late. Paul Myers sent me a text and said you better get on the presentation. It's a good one. My question is, and you probably already answered this earlier, but are there any new ponds that will be open for hunting this year? Anything that's different from last year?
No, nothing new this year.
Nothing about, you can't open A6, huh?
Well, you know what? A6 is just a really interesting pond. So here's the thing. Before we breached A6, it was a pond, right? It was a managed pond with a water control structure.
Right.
A6 is now a tidal area. And this is where I would have Glendale chime in. Unless it is posted as no hunting, tidal areas are open to hunting. And that's the bottom line. And
there used to be a sign on both entrances that said no hunting.
Okay.
But the sign, I believe, is gone at this point. It's not there. So if it's not there, does that mean you can hunt in there? Because it is tidal.
It is tidal. I'm going to have Glendale chime in if you want.
Where's Glendale? Say yes, please.
Here he is. Here you go.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, thanks for asking that question. As of right now, can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so as of right now, the overview map of the refuge, we don't, right now, it's not considered an open pond for you to go in. It does mess with a little bit of the open waterways because the state of California, if it's titled, you should be able to go in there. I'll have to get back to you on that because I need to talk to management, Matt, as well. And I don't foresee it being an issue since it is breached and you can go in there. But we also have other ponds that are breached that we don't allow hunting, like A21. And so if we're gonna do it for A6, we're gonna have to do it for A22 and A21 as well. It just depends because we have to talk to the biologist and we have to talk to management. We have to figure out how we're gonna open it, and we're gonna be like consistent across the board. Matt, if you want to chime in as well.
No, I think we've had this discussion, it's tricky as they transition. When do they stop being what they were and start being what we want them to be? So I think what we can commit to, it's a really good question, Roy. Like, what are we going to do about A6? Because it's certainly not what it was. It's also not to its end state yet, right? It's in this transition zone in between. We will get you an answer well before the start of hunt season. We will get you a firm answer. We'll put it, we'll publish it on the website so it's not ambiguous, and we'll get you an answer about A6 before we start hunting.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's a couple of hot spots in there that you just can't get to.
This is Dale. I have a question for Matt.
I think Roy's still busy telling us how many birds are hiding in A6 that he can't get at. So it's very faint though, but I definitely got the gist of it. Like, they're all in there. Why? So we got that. We'll get you an answer, Roy. Okay, Dale.
Thank you.
I've hunted A3W for almost from day one, and there is a walking bike trail that comes right into the corner by the check station on the east end of the pond. Is that closed during hunting season? Because I think I ran into a guy a couple of years ago who was definitely an anti-hunter, and we had a few words. But is that trail closed when hunting season starts?
I'm gonna share my screen again, Dale, so we can all look at the map, and I want to make sure we're all talking about the same spot here. So let me just share this real quick, and we'll pull up that. Let's see. I'll pull up this map right
If you're coming in from the east end, the Sunnyvale water treatment gate, and then you come down to the gate where the check station is in the corner of the pond, there's a trail that comes in from the left.
Yes.
It goes along the levee. And I wondered if that was supposed to be closed during hunting season or not.
No. So that trail will remain open. So that's part of the Bay Trail system. It goes along the ponds here. And then here it takes a little jog and it goes on the inside, off the road that we drive in on. And it follows, along this southern shore here. But the brown dashed line will remain open the entire time.
Okay, well, that's what I was curious.
Yep, that's a good question. But yeah, that Bay Trail will remain open.
Hi, this is Paul. I had a question about the San Pablo hunting in the north. I was just curious about I have the map here that you guys have on the website, but on the south side of 37 from Pond 1 and 1A, is that allowed there, or do I have to go all the way out to the bay?
I am. Sorry, Paul. I am pulling up that map now. Like, I have to have a map in front of me. I'm completely visual.
Okay.
So the south side of the southern portion of Highway 37 on the other side of Pond 1 and 1A. And you're asking if that is actually a strip marsh that we have that would only be, how do I want to phrase this? It depends on how far, because if you look at that map really closely, the very southern portion of Highway 37 is state owned and managed. So you can theoretically pull off on the shoulder of Highway 37 and set up and hunt from that area. If you're talking about hunting much closer to open water, then you would need to access that by boat. And so obviously if I were you, I would recommend parking along Highway 37 and hunting that small brown stretch of road or of marsh, pardon me.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I know there's a waterway that goes straight out to the bay right there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've seen guys going out there, but I haven't seen too many people just pull off and jump down in that strip of land. That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, you can do that south of 1 and 1A.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be clear, going forward, starting this season, that levee between AB1 and A2E will be closed to storing boats. Or is it dependent on the construction schedule of the contractor?
So it is dependent on the construction schedule. We want to keep it as available for as long as possible. So we're not saying you can't put boats there this year. And hopefully in the next several weeks and well before hunt season starts, we will have the schedule from the contractor. And as soon as we get that, we'll share with the community here. So at this point, we want to keep it accessible as long as we can. It won't be accessible once they start construction on that area. So that's sort of the situation there. But as soon as we know what the construction timeline is, we will share that with the group.
And a follow-up, when they finish construction, will there be some type of bridge or, over the breach area, or will it be a pipe? Will there be access in the future to store boats there once it's breached and that construction's done? You're on mute.
Do this all day and I still can't remember to take myself off mute. So at this point, we're not planning to put a bridge. It's likely going to be a fairly substantial breach, probably between 40 and 50 feet in there. And then they're actually going to be pulling material off that interior levee, because what we like, instead of a steep island that attracts gulls, we'd like it to be a low flat island, which is more attractive to different wildlife. So it will likely not be accessible after we finish the work. That outer levee part of that interior levee between the two ponds.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa, you're muted.
Wow, okay. Sorry. So if you're already on the email list or you're already a member of the Facebook group, I'm going to keep everyone apprised of the construction schedule and what's going to be happening where. And so if you're not already on that, just contact me and I'll make sure to keep you in the loop.
I'll make an announcement. Melissa?
Hi, my name is Steve. I had a question for you.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
go ahead. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, the north side of the Sunnyvale Water Pollution Control Plant along the Guadalupe Slough there, that's open for hunting 7 days a week, correct?
Yeah, that's, yes, it is open for hunting. And that's an area, as you know, I get calls every year. It's, let me see if I can pull that area up just so I can show everyone else the area we're talking about. We get so many questions about this area.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Let me share my screen really quickly just so I can show everybody. So the area you're talking about, I believe, is this these areas right in here, right? And
Right. Yeah.
yeah, the bottom line is this is this is jurisdiction of the state.
Right.
Hunting is allowed in this area. You just need to get off of the trail down onto the levee and be shooting
Right.
these areas. But I know that there are trail users who just get really super grumpy about
They do. They do.
hunting. And I don't know what to tell you, except for try to get down off of the trail as far as you can and just
Right.
avoid that interaction.
Right.
Hey, Melissa, this is
Yes.
Mike. Years ago, I hunted that area and had a very unpleasant experience with the SWAT team. And so, and it was because I was duck hunting and somebody called it in as, something it wasn't. After that, communication was really good between the refuge and local law enforcement. I imagine you're continuing those efforts and keeping Sunnyvale PD and others apprised of, our activities out there.
Yeah, and we even met with Sunnyvale PD several years ago to talk about that specific area. I've talked to a Sunnyvale PD officer who's also a hunter who was confused about that area as well. But yeah, it's open to hunting. It just, it'd be good to just get the trail and down close to the toe of the levee.
Right. Yeah, I actually patrol those levees every day. I actually work for the water pollution control plant there in Sunnyvale and also hunt. So I do talk to public safety as often as I can when I see them out there. Yeah, we do get those disgruntled bay trail walkers that don't like hunters whatsoever. But I try to keep the peace, make sure they know that we're doing the right thing, we're safe, and we're doing everything legitimate. But no matter what, they're never going to be happy. So it's just a little bit hard to keep them managed a little bit.
Yeah, I hear from the same people that you do, I'm sure, and you just can't explain a philosophy to someone like that, like waterfowl hunting. So it's just a challenging area.
Right. I know. I heard that. I just wanted to make sure because this is my second year hunting over there, so I just wanted to make sure that area right there was open 7 days a week.
Yeah. And we're talking about, so this is all not refuge, but these marshes in here, yeah, they're administered by the state and you can hunt there. So
perfect. Wonderful. Awesome. That's all I have.
If you do run into any issues there, please contact the state California game wardens. They are well aware of the situation there, and they're advocate for people to hunt there. So you can contact me as well, and I can forward you to the correct lieutenant or the game warden that works that area specifically. But yeah, just if you run into any issues with anybody, getting in the way of your guys' hunt, you guys got to let us know and document it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll do. I'll send you off an email and then I'll get that information from you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Roy, I'm looking at your comment in the notes or in the chat. South Bay Yacht Club will be installing a dock in 2 weeks, which will work well for bay boat hunters if you want to moor your boats, keep your boat in the water. So.
I had the dock there about 5 years ago when it was lost in a storm.
Yeah.
And we just finally got the permits, which took 2.5 years to replace those docks. And those docks, it's a bigger, better dock, better security than the old one. And it's going in within the next 2 weeks. And we've just installed a new gangway, so the whole facility is being upgraded significantly. If anyone's ever been over there, go take a look now. You'll be very surprised. And also, just FYI, if you ever want to have a meeting and need a place to meet, contact me, and the Yacht Club is always available for an in-person meeting once that's available again.
Great. now, people can contact me via email or cell or Matt or Glendale at any time on or off season to talk about hunting.
Yeah, and thank you all for your time this evening. You know, it's end of a long day, so thank you all for joining us.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone have a very good evening. We'll see you on the Refuge in September.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. See you, Dennis.
Okay, Melissa.
Thanks.
So Matt, once you have the recording available,
Yeah.
let me
yes,
know.
yes.
Let me know, and for